So I've been getting a lot of asks about doing a getting started video for new students who maybe don't know how Connections Academy really works or things like that, you know, if it's your first year. And so I feel like this is true at a lot of schools, but I really think understanding, you know, how Connections works is pretty key in actually doing well, because a lot of things are different from a physical school, and so knowing about everything that's different and how to sort of handle that is pretty important throughout the year, at least I think. So I guess I'm just going to be like randomly talking about things that I think are important to know, or things that I've learned, or just advice that I might have. So I guess I'll start with enrollment, and that's that, first of all, I can't really answer a lot of it, like specific enrollment questions. Like I can answer things about, like, you know, you need to complete your enrollment package and send that in, but I don't know what the time frame is. It varies school to school, so I can only really speak to the school I'm at, and no one ever really specifies, like, for Nevada Connections Academy, what's the deal, and I don't know because I'm not in Nevada, so so I can't really answer a ton of specific enrollment questions. Like if you go through my Tumblr and read my responses to the enrollment questions, it's almost always like, well, this might be the case, but it might not be. And so, like, I apologize that I'm really vague, but I can't really say very specific things about enrollment itself. I do know that the enrollment teams have been really, really hammered with tons and tons of documents. It's kind of interesting that at FLVS in Florida, there was like a 30% enrollment drop this year, and yet at like all the other Connections Academy schools, there's been like a massive increase. And of course that's just because of like specific Florida legislation or whatever, but they've been really, really slammed this year with documents to process compared to other years. So just be patient with the enrollment teams. I know it's really frustrating, and I know that some of you are like actually behind in your schoolwork because you've been enrolled late, but you know, they're going as fast as they can, and there's nothing I could really say about that other than that. So yeah, sorry. If you are behind because you've been enrolled late, definitely contact your teachers and let them know that. Some of them, in rare cases, just because like they're being nice, will let you skip lessons or cut things out of lessons so that they're easier and, you know, you can finish them quicker. But that's probably not always the case. The reason that I really encourage you to contact your teachers is just because, you know, so that they know what's going on, so that they don't think you're a slacker, so that you don't get like angry emails or angry phone calls from them. Something that kids complain about a lot are the CBAs. Those are curriculum-based assessments, and it's basically when the teacher like randomly calls you and pop quizzes you on like the latest material that you've worked on in their course. And it's like, they're just infamous because they're like pretty stressful. Sometimes teachers, you know, act like you've done something wrong almost when they're like quizzing you. Most of them are nice about it, but you know, it happens, and it's like a source of worry for a lot of students. So those are really the only things that it really helps you to call them and tell them what's going on, so that, you know, they don't like call you and pop quiz you constantly because they think you're slacking. So that's mainly why I tell you, you know, call your teachers, let them know. And calling is like really important. Everyone like tries to run away from calling because, you know, it's scary and you have to talk to your teachers, but it's so much better than webmailing, just in that like it really helps to keep your teachers off your back if you call. So you just suck it up and call at the beginning of the year, especially because then you haven't done that many lessons. Like they can't just randomly quiz you on all this complicated stuff because you haven't gotten to the really complicated stuff yet. So it's kind of a win-win. So just, yeah, call early, call often, even though it's terrible. It really does help keep your teachers happy. And that's pretty important because they control your grades. So, yeah, that's basically it with enrollment. The next thing is, you know, kiss butt early and often with your teachers. It's really important to keep them happy, like I just said. I would definitely encourage you to go to live lessons. I know, especially early on, it can be like really basic content, And maybe it's not for you, but it can seem a little bit boring, especially at the beginning, maybe throughout the entire course. But a lot of teachers give like bonus points for that. Like they give extra credit for going to lessons, and it's kind of awesome because you don't even need to do anything. In most cases, you just kind of like need to show up and say hi and whatever. There's actually a way that you can auto schedule on Windows your computer so that it like automatically opens the live lesson page for you at a certain time. I might do a tutorial on that at some point. I have to like remember how I do that. There might be a way to do that on Mac too. I'm not sure. I don't use Mac, so yeah. But that's the other thing, if you're like forgetful and you don't remember, is that you can have it like automatically open the page for you. So that kind of helps. But yeah, go to live lessons. This past year they introduced actually a participation grade. So now you actually get graded on like how often you show up and whether or not you call your teachers or whether or not you webmail or anything. So you do want to keep in contact with them. It's, you know, kind of stressful as that can be. It's kind of necessary, unfortunately. But by keeping in contact with them often, your contacts are probably going to be less stressful each time, because it's not like they're going to be calling you like, you haven't talked to me in 2 months, tell me all about everything you've done in my course in that time. Like, it's not some kind of crazy quiz or anything. It's just like, here's what you've done recently, okay? So you can kind of help yourself by kissing butt early and often. So please do that. Doing extra credit is really important too, along those same lines. The extra credit opportunities, even though it's even more schoolwork that you have to do, they often give you like a crap load of points just for doing like trivial stuff. I found personally, and this may not be the same for everyone, but in my courses, the extra credit assignments are usually a lot easier than what's in the course itself. Or they give you extra credit for, you know, going to live lessons or going to special events or something like that. Not physically, but like sometimes they bring in guest speakers and things like that, and if you go, then you get a certain amount of like extra credit points in your class. So it generally usually only requires participation, or it's like a simpler kind of assignment than you're going to usually see. So it's really in your benefit to do extra credit. And it gives you then padding, especially if you're like prone to falling behind. It then gives you that padding that you need to like speed through a bunch of courses and still come out with like a grade that's not terrible, which if you want to go to college you kind of need to do. So yeah, do extra credit. It's really helpful. As far as like work ethic goes, there is a lot of flexibility. I mean, technically you can do your schoolwork whenever you want. There may be a few mandatory live lessons, but I mean, I've been here for 3 years and I've only ever had one. So that's not really that common, but it can happen sometimes, so I don't want to say that you're always going to have as much flexibility as you want, because you're not going to. But you do have more than you have in physical school, which is the benefit. But you do need to be working. I mean, most teachers expect that what is assigned in your lessons is turned in like at the end of the week. I mean, they all say like you have to turn it on time, you have to turn everything in on time, and it has to be like the day that I've assigned it. But in reality, none of them ever take points off. Like, in the 3 years that I've been here, I was late once on something that I did, or not once, but many times on things that I've done, and only once did a teacher take points off. Like, they're usually just like angry at you, and that's it. So, you know, try not to piss your teachers off, but try to get your work done at the end of the week, if not the end of the day. So that's basically the only thing. Personally, I like to work every day, not just weekdays, but then weekends too, on my coursework. It's really going to depend on your course load, like what courses you're taking, how difficult the subjects are for you, and honestly, it helps to have people to talk to them. Like, it helps to have people in certain fields to talk to. I don't know if that's an option for everyone, but like, I have lots of older friends who are engineers or scientists or whatever, that I've met that like I'm able to talk to about physics or calculus or whatever course I'm taking, and it makes it a lot more interesting just because like it's not just textbook stuff to them, it's stuff that they actually do, and they kind of bring some unique insights to that. So if you can if you like your teachers and you can talk to them about it, do, because it really, really helps, I think, just because then it's not like this boring crap that you're learning in school that no one cares about. Which is how high school often feels. So try to avoid that if you can, and talk to people. It helps. So yeah, just work whenever you can, whenever you feel like it. But if you're the kind of person who like always procrastinates, you are gonna have to work through that to some extent. Just because I've been really behind. Like I'm one of those kids who has been hundreds of lessons behind, and who spent like months at the end like crying every day because I had so much stuff to do. So don't do that. As someone who does that, I have to tell you, please don't do that. You will hate your life. So keep up to date with your schoolwork as best as possible, but like definitely do a self-check at the end of the week and be like, have I done all my stuff? Because if you haven't, then you should go back and do your stuff. Best advice. If you want to double up on lessons too, that helps. Especially at the beginning of the year, like right now. It tends to be the more intro stuff in the course, so you can like do 2 lessons a day in certain circumstances and like get away with that and whatever else. And then that gives you a cushion later on if you procrastinate and fall behind a little bit. Then, you're already ahead, so it doesn't really matter as much. So that helps a lot too. The other thing regarding lessons is that, and I actually just got asked about this today, where they said, I feel like what I was tested on, it wasn't the same as like what I learned in the lesson. And unfortunately, that's like a really big problem at Connections, I think, is that the curriculum department is in charge of constructing your lessons and your assessments. But then your teachers are in charge of then teaching you what's in there. But what happens a lot of the time is that the curriculum department and the teachers aren't on the same page. And so you end up getting tested on things that are slightly different than what you've learned, or in some cases vastly different. Like I've had a few assessments where I'm like, we did not talk about this. But what happens a lot more often is that there'll be like one little link somewhere in your lesson to this one obscure speech or something, and then like, and it's not emphasized in the lesson, like they're just like, here, click on this if you're interested. And then you get to your assessment and the entire thing is about that one random speech. And so you do need to click on like all the links that they give you, and I know that that's really tedious, but definitely do that. The other thing is, contact your teachers and ask what you need to know, not just to get like a good understanding of the subject, because that's going to be different than what you're being tested on. You need to ask them what you're going to be tested on, what little nuances or like subtleties there are in your lessons that you really need to know for those tests, because otherwise you're going to get screwed. Especially in science now, or in social studies, and this is something that I did the audio post on, is that now you don't have time, really, in the middle of unit tests or finals to call your teachers and be like, I don't understand what this means, help, because you only have 2 hours until the page auto-submits. So if you're playing phone tag with your teachers, or email tag, or whatever, you can't get that clarification. So you really do need to know ahead of time. You can't just like open the assessment anymore and then call your teacher and be like, I don't know what this means, and spend 5 hours on it because they're timing it now. Excellent. So it sucks, but that's the way it is. So definitely contact your teachers ahead of time and try and get a pretty good understanding of what's going to be on the assessment, because otherwise there's not really any way to know, and you don't want to be stuck in that kind of situation. It's really frustrating. So along those same lines, I guess, it can also be really helpful to use outside resources. Like, personally, I don't just use just the links that they gave me in the lesson. I also like to use, in AP, Princeton review books, Barron's books, like the review things for AP. They really help. A lot of the time the assessments were constructed to like specifically be like the AP test, and so using those kinds of like third-party review materials can really help with that. Definitely use Khan Academy for math and science, mostly math though, because they have videos on like pretty much any topic that you would ever cover in high school or in middle school or anything like that. Like they go all the way from very basic addition and subtraction all the way through like rocket science, calculus stuff. So if you're struggling with math, go to Khan Academy and watch a couple of videos. They're also pretty good because they have like practice problems, again, in almost every like math topic there is. So it can really help to get kind of like that outside teaching perspective, because if you have a math teacher who's really boring or really bad at teaching math, you're kind of otherwise screwed. So go find someone who's not really bad at teaching math, like the guy at Khan Academy, and learn from them, because then you'll be alright. So yeah, definitely use outside resources. I recently paid for a Wolfram Alpha subscription. It's like Google, except specifically like for math and computational problems. And that can really help. Like it gives automatic answers and stuff to certain math problems. So I mean, I'm obligated to tell you that you can't use this on assessments and stuff, but it can really help with homework. And for certain problems, it also gives you a step-by-step like solution, like every single thing that you did from what you typed in, like the prompt, to the solution. And that's so helpful. And it's not just like math with no explanation. They have like text explanations beside every single step too. And it's not like one of those unreputable like tutor sites or whatever. It's like an actual thing that scientists have developed. It's really amazing. So I paid for a subscription to that, and if you go to Connections Academy or FLVS or something, I just asked for like a screenshot of your top bar that like verifies that you're a student, and just send that to me in like an ask that's not anonymous, and then I can give you the login information for that if you want that. But yeah, use outside resources. They're really helpful. I think the last thing I really have to say, and this goes for pretty much everyone, but new students especially don't necessarily know. I've heard that a lot of people are like not happy with the courses they got put in, or want to add another one or something like that. And the school, they tend to be kind of like hard ass about not letting kids take the courses that they want. And I have a big problem with that. Like, that's the thing that, like, I'm kind of notorious at my school, like the specific Connections Academy school I go to. Like, people in the guidance department know me because I complain and, like, argue my way into all the courses that I want. And so I would really encourage you, if you want to take a harder course, if you want to take an easier course, if you want to take any course ever or drop a course, argue with them until they let you. And it's kind of ridiculous, because you should really be able to go to them and be like, I'm not happy, I want this course, do it. But, yeah, they tend to be kind of rigid, and it sucks, but just push for what you want. Like, I can't tell you how many posts I've seen, like, tagged with Connections Academy or FLVS that are like, they removed my art class, or they removed this class, or added this class randomly, or they're not letting me take AP, and I'm so angry, but I guess that's it. Like, no! Fight for your stuff! If you want to take a certain course, argue with them until they let you, because they will ultimately let you. You know, most students don't do that, so if you keep arguing with them, they're gonna let you eventually, just to make you go away. So it's effective. I mean, it sucks, and it can be kind of like a long and tedious battle, but if you really want to take a certain course, you should just go for that and make them let you take that course. So yeah, do that. There's usually an ad drop period. I think it's about 2 weeks after the start of each semester. And that's when you're like supposed to request additions or to withdraw from courses. But even if you're beyond that, again, if you just argue with your guidance counselors enough, they'll eventually let you do it. I've never been in a situation where they haven't eventually let me take a course. And don't buy their like prerequisite thing either. Like if you're trying to take some of the more advanced courses or whatever, and they tell you, well, you haven't done like basic psychology, or you haven't done algebra 2 and you want to do AP physics or something, you can't do that until you do the prerequisite. It's crap. There's no, the College Board is the organization that does AP, and they have no national requirements about prerequisites into the AP program. So if you want to take an AP or even an honors course, and they're saying that there's a prereq for that, tell them no and keep arguing. Because I've taken tons and tons of courses without doing the prerequisites, and they're not happy about it, but they let me. So just argue your way into courses, basically. That's probably most of the advice that I have. There are other things that I could say about placeholders and extensions, but those are really only relevant if you've gotten behind. And it's pretty early, so I'm hoping no one's like super behind yet. But if anyone wants me to do a video on like what to do when you're behind, besides like cry over your life, then let me know and I will probably talk about that then. So yeah, thanks guys. This was like a really long video, so sorry about that. And it was only of me talking. I'm kind of lazy. Like, I recognize when you said do a video, you probably meant like screenshots or something, but that requires editing, and editing takes lots and lots and lots of time. So I might do that eventually, at some point in the future. But for now, it might just be me ranting, because I enjoy ranting. And yeah, so this addressed a lot, and hopefully it's helpful. Thanks, bye.